I've recently come across a video of an incident happened in the very heart of Russia, near Voronezh. A woman dressed in camouflage, pretending to have some kind of authority, stopped a car and was not allowing it to enter Voronezh province. The reason was given: Voronezh is only for Voronezhians, for the residents only. Others aren't even allowed to cross the border of the province. I couldn't believe that I was hearing that again. It's been a very long time since I heard that for the last time.
Здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте. Откуда? Я вас уже сколько раз здесь засекала, и вы все равно здесь стоите.
А вы кто? Что?
Вы на Свердлова. Я кто такая? Я общественник. Вы
Ага,
понимаете,
это
я
хорошо.
общественный деятель.
И при чем тут я?
Всего правительства. Причем здесь? Я говорю, регионы нам чужие не нужны. Вы поняли или
А
нет?
кому вам?
У нас только регионы 136, 36.
Ага. Смотрите,
Вот так.
тут очень много левых.
Много левых, вот
Да.
они же здесь. И левых здесь нет. Я вижу только здесь 136, 36 и 31 зона, это белорусская. Это наши ребята. А вы, это совсем другая зона. Откуда вы прибыли?
Я с Росуша.
Не надо мне говорить с Росоши, дураков здесь нет. Закона не обмануть.
Я не обманываю закон, почему?
А что вы делаете? А что вы делаете?
Я живу здесь.
Давайте паспорт, прописку.
А вы покажите свои документы сначала.
Я тебе ничего. Кто ты такой, чтобы я тебе
Не, а вы
показывала?
кто такой? Я что
У меня
кого-то...
вот доказательство.
Это не
у меня.
документ же.
Вот, это документ.
Какой
это,
документ? Покажите
если у
свои
тебя
документы.
в голове нет, что это такое,
Это у вас
это
нет.
правительственное. И меня не
слушайте,
оскорбляй. Я
пожалуйста,
тебе
не
сказала,
надо.
я тебе могу.
This seems like a small accident, but it's far from being small and insignificant. It is a sign of a disaster nearing. This is a forerunner of multiple bloody conflicts that will rock Russia soon. Fasten your seatbelts and watch Russia descend into darkness. Russia has many dark pages in its history. And Russian people aren't angels, despite of what the propaganda says, how wonderful they are, respecting family values, Christian values, and so forth. Just to give you a couple of examples, the Red Terror that took place from 1917 to 1922. It was ordered by the founder of the USSR, Vladimir Lenin, and carried out by his associate, the founder of the KGB, Felix Dzerzhinsky. At least 1,200,000 regular Russian people were executed for one reason, and one reason only. They didn't like the new state, and that cost them their lives. Lenin ordered, but he wasn't the one pulling the trigger. Millions of Russian people, regular Russian people, who joined Lenin's Bolshevik party were given the right to judge, sentence, and execute, and to do it all at once. Regular people, given the power by some kind of freak of accident, were the ones ruthlessly murdering their compatriots. Regular Russians murdering regular Russians by hundreds of thousands for no reason, just for the pure joy of it. Let's move to another example. The Great Terror this time. Before it was the Red Terror. Now it's the Great Terror. Ordered by the bloodthirsty vampire Joseph Stalin, executed by KGB's head, Yezhov, in 1937 and 1938. Close to 1 million of Russians executed for nothing, based on fabricated charges of espionage and treason. Again, Stalin ordered, but he wasn't the one who was pulling the trigger, who pulled the trigger 1,000,000 times. The KGB officers did. Millions of regular people, just like me and you, who just happened to work in the KGB. They were given the power to kill the comrades, and they did that with pleasure. And Russians don't like to talk about that. It's one of those topics that is a kind of informal taboo. Let's take another example, not so drastic. Over the years of the USSR, millions of Russians produced anonymous denunciation letters. Work colleagues, neighbors, friends, even family members wrote letters to the KGB fabricating false accusations, sometimes informing of something that really happened, but informing anonymously. Even I, growing up in the 70s and in the 80s in the USSR, far from the most dangerous and bad time, I remember the fear of getting falsely accused that my family members, the older ones, did. Trust me, it's not a good feeling. You see, Russian people are no angels. They have some dark beasts sitting deep inside them. One of the beasts was us against them mentality. If one is not one of us, let's crush and destroy him, just for the sake of being not of us. In 1991, the USSR fell apart, and Russians all of a sudden became free. What an intoxicating feeling that was. I was lucky to have experienced it. And everything changed. I thought we all started fresh. The dark pages were burned, the beasts were defeated, gone with the old country. We were off to do great things, to achieve great goals. Forget about that old stuff. It was all in the past. I thought we were so over it. We moved on. And the dark inheritance of the USSR was disappearing, slowly but surely. I remember in the early 90s, already in Russia, the institution of mandatory residency registration, or propiska in Russian, was still alive. To live in Moscow, for example, one needed propiska. Well, to live anywhere. I'll just give you Moscow as an example. To live in Moscow, one needed propiska, a permit of the state to become the resident of Moscow. And among benefits, and there were quite a few, so among benefits for the registered official Russians living in Moscow was employment authorization in Moscow. I know, it sounds crazy, but Russian citizens were not allowed to be employed in Moscow without residency registration. Many Russians came to Moscow and worked anyway, but it was illegal and punished by fines. It was still the case in 1997. I clearly remember my friend bragging of receiving Moscow's residency registration through marriage. He married a girl who was a Muscovite, and her parents registered my friend in their apartment, and voila, he became legal. I think that anyone who lived in Russia in the 90s remembers Moskovskaya propiska, the Moscow registration. Понаехавшие. Those out of the Moscovites, not Moscovites. Понаехали тут. These are phrases you could hear on the street quite often. It was us belong here and they don't. Us versus them mentality was still alive, but it was dying. I thought it was on the last breath. I spent the 90s and the early 2000s far away from Russia, and upon returning, I saw a new life. New values, new mentality. I thought that the old dark beasts were gone. I was wrong. The beasts were still there. I just didn't notice them. But now I recall things, and now I look at things differently, of the things past, and I remember them. They were still there. This is what my friend Manos, an American from Philadelphia, remembers from traveling in Russia some 20 years ago.
Yeah, my name is Manis. I'm from Philadelphia, USA. I had the opportunity to travel to Moscow in 2007. It was actually the first time I ever had an international passport. Those of us my age and maybe close to my age can remember that 2007 was a year that you had to have an international passport to travel. Earlier, we could travel without it, but 2007. I chose to go to Moscow as my first trip. And while I was there, it was an excellent trip. I had a great time. I met a lot of fun and interesting people. But there was one incident where a couple joined our table and we were having a lively conversation. And then the couple left. And a woman leaned over to me and said about the woman who left, she's from the countryside. I detected a discrimination, a racist type feeling, and it just blew me away. And it's as if I did not notice any difference between anybody, or why this woman was considered to be less worthy or less human or anything along those lines.
Village people versus city people was a big thing in the USSR, and I thought in Russia there was no more. Well, Manos clearly saw it in 2007, and I wasn't noticing at the time. Well, let's fast forward to 2024. Well, before we fast forward, I would like to thank you for supporting me. Thank you for watching these videos, liking them, subscribing to the channel, sending wonderful messages and emails. Thank you for praying for me and with me every day. Thank you for buying coffees at buymecoffee.com, for supporting at patreon.com, PayPal, and crypto. This is day 160 of being demonetized by Google for what it appears to be my stand for Ukraine and against the war Russia is waging. But I promise you, monetized or demonetized, I continue my stand. So, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. After YouTube demonetized me, it started demoting my channel. So, if you help me share this video by liking, commenting, and sharing it on social media, I'd really appreciate it. It really helps. Thank you. Now let's fast forward to 2024.
Я говорю, регионы нам чужие не нужны. Вы поняли или
А
нет?
кому вам?
У нас только регионы 136, 36.
Ага. Смотрите,
так.
тут очень много левых.
Много левых, вот
Да.
они же здесь. И левых здесь нет. Я вижу только здесь 136, 36 и 31 зона, это белорусская. Это наши ребята. А вы, это совсем другая зона. Откуда? Давайте паспорт, прописку.
This isn't a small incident. It's a forerunner of something big. The beasts are alive and well, full of energy. But this time, it's so much more and so much more dangerous. Russian society starts changing. It's entering the 4th year of the war with Ukraine. The war that no one understands what it's being fought for. The war that no one understands why hundreds of thousands of people on both sides have died for. No one understands why Ukrainian cities are being razed. No one understands why Russia is being forced to turn into the war economy at the expenses of our country's future. No one understands what has been going on in the past 3 years, really. Of course, Russian propaganda has all the answers for people. Only those answers don't go well. People are feeling lies. The reality differs greatly from the TV pictures. People are feeling betrayed. Even the dumbest alcoholics understand now that nothing is going according to the plan, because there's no plan. The initial plan was to capture Kyiv in 3 days, and when that didn't happen, there hasn't been anything ever since. Only lies, lies, lies in large quantities to mask terrible reality. There's nothing in the future of the country, and more people are realizing that. There's not one idea uniting the country, no ideology. The Russian world idea is being shotted into pieces and forgotten. And that is happening inside Russia. People have sacrificed their well-being, their children's future. They have sacrificed lives of their loved ones but they haven't been given anything in return. Their lives are turning from bad to worse instead. They are feeling they've been conned. The more they realize that, the angrier they become. And that anger is coming out in different forms. There's anger towards the government, but there's anger towards everyone around, towards people from neighboring provinces, from different towns, villages, even from different streets. I saw that happening a long time ago, in the 80s when I was growing up. People were so angry and betrayed by the state, the violence was the result. And that anger is an excellent food for inner beasts, the ones that they were sleeping deep inside Russian people. And they are being well fed right now. I recognize the same picture of disappointment and anger, only not in the USSR, only now in Russia 40 years later. And it is just the beginning. But there will be not just violence like in the 80s. Please add to the equation the war veterans damaged by PTSD, myriads of readily accessible illegal guns that have flooded Russia, private armies, legal private armies, and armed militias answering to governors of the country's provinces. It is a disaster waiting to happen. Russian people have felt weak and helpless. Nothing is up to me, nothing I can do. These two phrases have been the most popular lately. Now, many start realizing that there's not much they can really do, as everything has been taken away from them, including their sons, husbands, fathers, and many people will be trying to do something in the future about it. Only the easiest way to vent your anger is not to aim it to the state, because state has very strong oppression machine. State bites back. The easiest way to take your anger out is at a person near you, at your neighbor, at someone who lives in other province, someone of different race or religion who is not a part of your tribe, who is one of them, not one of us. Russian propaganda was turning Russian people against the West and NATO. They have been doing it for the past 3 years incredibly intensively. But it has gone too far. And the Russians now are turning against other Russians. There will be conflicts inside Russia. All it takes is a spark, something small, like this conflict in the video I showed you, that where a woman in a camouflage with a Russian flag isn't allowing a regular person, a regular car, enter her province. It takes one woman with a camouflage and pretending to have some authority over other people. It'll take yelling, then there will be fist fighting, then perhaps guns will be fired, and before you know, there will be blood. And it'll be spreading like California wildfires, fueled by Santa Ana winds. And I think that the genie is out of the bottle. It's done. There's no way back. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. By the way, I am monitoring this closely and giving patrons of Inside Russia news daily as they happen. 9 news a day from Russia every single day, 54 news every week. The news that you will not find anywhere in the mainstream media, but that explain what's happening in Russia real well. They're available at patreon.com. The link is down below in the description and in the pinned comment. Check it out. When you attack your innocent neighbor and brainwash your people into supporting it, it'll come back to you like a boomerang. That's how the world works. And the boomerang is coming back right now. That Russian woman forbidding citizens to move freely between the provinces.
Регионы нам чужие не нужны. Вы поняли или
А
нет?
кому вам?
У нас только регионы 136, 36.
Ага.
is the first spark. Many more are to come. Carthago delenda est.